Love Triangle Part 3. I have been explaining to you the nature of the interaction that takes place in respect of the way that a narcissist behaves. In this instance, Craig James, who had been poisoning his wife, who eventually died, and had been having an affair. Evidence that was provided as a consequence of an affidavit that was supplied by Aurora Police Department explained that the deponent, a Detective B. Olson, spoke with an individual. This individual's name is redacted from the affidavit that I have seen, but the content states as follows. Redacted stated, Angela and James's marriage had always been tumultuous. That, of course, is a clear indicator of abusive conduct and, of course, is demonstrative of the narcissistic dynamic between narcissist and intimate partner primary source. There are ups and downs within marriages, within relationships, but they are invariably caused by external factors such as somebody's ill health, family problems in the extended family, for instance, the loss of a job. The up and down isn't created from the relationship itself, but that is what happens with narcissism. Many people think that because their relationship is up and down, because they're being shouted at, physically abused, sexually abused, etc., by their partner, that in a way that is just the sort of ups and downs, the vagaries of a relationship. It isn't. It is demonstrative of abusive behaviours where it happens over a sustained period of time and repeatedly. There are those individuals that fail to understand that that type of relationship is an abusive one. They fail to understand that it is indicative of the behaviour of a narcissist. That everything's all right one moment, then it turns bad. Then it's okay again, then it's difficult again. Up, down, the roller coaster ride. And the fact that a relationship has been described as tumultuous is an indicator of the behaviour of a narcissist. The affidavit also makes reference to the fact that James had multiple affairs with several women. This also is demonstrative of an absence of emotional empathy for her in repeatedly cheating on her, a sense of entitlement to seek relationships outside of his marriage, a lack of accountability for his behaviours. We don't receive any evidence as to how she knows about this, whether she caught him, whether he was obvious, perhaps even that he boasted about such behaviours to her by way of triangulating her. But the fact is, the information was known that Craig James had numerous affairs with various women, intimate partners, secondary sources. James Craig, in behaving in such a manner, was one whereby he had no regard for her, that he was seeking fuel with these repeated affairs. The affidavit also explains that James Craig was apparently addicted to pornography and had been since he was a teenager. As I explained earlier, the declaration of addiction to pornography is actually symptomatic of the sexual behaviour of a particular type of narcissist. If you read my book, Sex and the Narcissist, I explain the role of pornography there. But it's common for a narcissist to claim that their problems relate to them being addicted to sex or addicted to pornography. It isn't the case. They're actually addicted to the control and the fuel, but they don't realise that. And their narcissism tries to provide them with an excuse for their behaviour. I can't help it. I have repeated affairs. I'm addicted to porn. I'm addicted to sex. It just means that I always want it. Really, what's going on is the sex is the means of getting the control and getting the fuel. And the narcissism utilises this supposed addiction to sex and pornography as an excuse to ensure that the narcissist is not fixed with accountability for their behaviours. The affidavit also explains that James Craig had drugged his wife approximately 5 to 6 years ago. Apparently, the deceased wife told Redacted that James drugged her with an unknown drug because he planned to go into their bathroom and give himself a lethal injection of something and commit suicide. James told Angela he drugged her so she wouldn't find him nor be able to save him, which would give the lethal drugs time to kill him. I suspect that he never intended to do that, and that he offered this as an excuse for why he'd done what he did, to make it seem like he was martyring himself and being somehow compassionate to her. Whilst narcissists do commit suicide, it is unusual. I think more likely what has happened here is that he drugged her for the purposes of trying to kill her. It failed, and when she challenged him about it, challenge fuel, he explained that he'd only done it because he was going to kill himself and he didn't want her to stop him from doing it. Therefore, it's an excuse to nullify the threat to control that's posed by her questioning him as to why he had drugged her. The affidavit also explained that he had financial issues and that he was on the cusp of filing for bankruptcy on a second occasion. This, of course, shows a lack of accountability for his behaviours in terms of being financially haphazard and using bankruptcy as a means to escape that. He, of course, has been charged with the crime of first-degree murder after deliberation and, in the circumstances, faces a very serious charge indeed. The information that's been provided in relation to James Craig demonstrates that he ticks many of the boxes to demonstrate what he is. He acts with a sense of entitlement. For instance, he orders people around, he expects them to respond immediately to his requirements, he's self-absorbed. It looks like he may well have taken money that wasn't belonging to him. He is described as a risk-taker in the affidavit, which is an issue with regard to his accountability. He tells lies. He doesn't appear to have any genuine friends. He would not provide any meaningful emotional support. He would not address the relationship issues that he was having with his wife in a meaningful fashion. He was prone to showmanship. You can see from the pictures that have been displayed that he thinks well of himself, that he likes to show off, that he thinks he's better than he actually is, likely thinks that he's cleverer than he actually is. There's a dismissiveness about him. There's an arrogance about him. He's clearly extremely manipulative. He engages in flattery and bribery, the telling of lies, future faking, triangulation with object, triangulation with person. Undoubtedly, he would issue silent treatments where he would ignore messages. He utilises pity play and smearing, promised gain, false compassion, false contrition, invalidation, belittlement, withdrawal, denial, guilt, provocation, projection, blame shifting, use of threat, use of insult, revision of history, gaslighting, argumentativeness, deflection. Likely that there would be sexual withdrawal. He would use vagueness and promise change also. There are issues with regard to boundary recognition in terms of the way that he would treat his wife, and furthermore, he shows various aspects of the narcissistic dynamic. There's facade management, what he portrays to the outside world as a successful dentist, that he treats others as an extension of himself. There's character trait acquisition. There's black and white thinking. There's the exhibition of the need to assert control. There's the exhibition of a response to a perceived threat to that control. He engages in hypocrisy. He exhibits envy. There's compartmentalization with regard to his behaviours, paranoia, hoovering, conducting an affair, the rejection of intimacy, many intimate relationships. Undoubtedly, he will have complained to the women that he had affairs with about his wife, presumably denoting her as abusive. He engages in the shelving dynamic, picking people up and putting them down. So he shows many, many narcissistic indicators to confirm that this is the behaviour of a narcissist, and also provides you with a useful example of how he was devaluing his intimate partner, primary source wife, while conducting many affairs, and also, it would appear, duping the intimate partner, secondary source, who was aware that he was married, and causing to question her judgment. Was it the fact that the intimate partner, secondary source with whom he was having an affair, the orthodontist, she a narcissist? Well, we don't have enough information about her to make a determination. It may well be that she had the wool pulled down over her eyes by him, telling her various stories about his relationship with his wife, resulting in her believing that the relationship was going to end and he was going to leave her, and then that she became ill, and that she felt sorry for him as a consequence of the illness of his wife. It can be seen as well the way that he would milk the situation from a variety of the texts that the police have referenced, where in communications which with what look like friends and family members, he writes, for instance, "Good morning," and the name is redacted. "Thank you for taking my patient load today. I want to make an urgent plea to you. If we were ever friends, please do this favour for me. Please don't talk to anyone about what we talked about last night, including any law enforcement officers." So this is the assertion of control by trying to keep somebody silent and using guilt. "You are under no obligation to answer their questions unless you are served a subpoena, and you will do more damage than good to my family by continuing to insert yourself into this. Angela is gone and I am devastated." False contrition, false humility. "There is nothing that can bring her back, and I want desperately to tell you all of the details so that you can better understand what's gone on behind the scenes with her. There is so much that you don't know that I wish you did. If you knew everything, this would make so much sense to you, but there's no use in telling you right now." Vagueness. "You and I have a history of you and the other partners and Jackie all talking about me behind my back." Paranoia, smearing, and deciding what you think is best, and then you're always the fall guy that has pulled the trigger or tell me what you've all decided about me. Paranoia. "In fact, yesterday you didn't even come to me. I had to seek you out. You have never given me the advantage of talking with me first. Pity play, you just decide and then act and hope I'll pick up the pieces later. This is a pattern in our business dealings and now has become a factor in our personal dealings. Let me paint a picture for you of what this has done. Yesterday, I had to tell my kids their mum was not going to wake up and they were to say their final goodbyes. That was at 6:45 p.m. The hospital said we could bring the kids up to say goodbye at that time, but because of the investigation you opened by your incomplete information, the hospital made those poor, grieving, hysterical kids wait until after 10 to see their mum." Now, of course, this is demonstrative of the behaviour of a narcissist, whereby he is the one that has poisoned her, but this is clearly directed at the colleague that raised the alarm about what he'd been purchasing, and therefore, rather than, of course, admit that he's the one at fault, he blames that person by saying, "You've caused all of this." Typical projection of the narcissist. Blame shifting. Pity play. He explains, "After an hour or so of saying goodbye to her, we went home just before midnight, only to have our house sealed against our entry by the police. Instead of getting to go home and find comfort, they were met with flashing lights and cold and feeling cops, and the kids, scared and confused, had to go sleep at the home of a ward member. Family started to come into town today, and I have to tell them they can't come to my house and try to explain why. I have had to hire a homicide attorney to make sure I don't end up being painted in the light that some hungry DA is anxious to paint me in, because I'm most likely going to be charged, even though that is absolutely not what happened." So accordingly, again, blame shifting and a complete absence of accountability, that he has the audacity to state, "You're the one that's caused all of these problems," when of course it's actually him. He continues, "Ryan, I understand why you did what you did. I do, I get it. But if you'd come to me personally, man to man, instead of talking to everyone else about what you thought you knew, I might have let you in on some details that would have made you less likely to cause this horrible storm." Blame shifting. "Man, Ryan, if you had only put me higher on your list of priorities instead of putting everyone else's opinions and gossips ahead of me." Pity play. Blame shifting. "For that, I am very, very mad at you. I've talked to you about this multiple times, but you don't seem to care, and now that you thought was responsible has become reckless and so destructive." Insult. Blame shifting. "And so I'm asking, if there's ever any love in your heart for me," guilt tripping, "please don't make this any worse by talking to any officers or anyone else about this, unless you are legally forced to do so. And whoever else in the team you think is going to be questioned, I'd ask that you privately ask them to honour this request too. Also, please don't respond to this text message until I text you again." Considerable indicator there with regard to the mindset of the way that this individual behaves, seeking to assert control over the individual Ryan and seeking to blame Ryan for having basically blown the whistle upon James Craig's behaviour. A substantial amount of evidence that supports the behaviour of a narcissist, and one that was operating, literally, a poisonous love triangle. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.